know that you and I have talked,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when we worked closely together many times about what makes a good software developer, and, you know, bemoaning the kinds of things that you know, some, you know, graduate programs go through and so on, and teach people at the expense of other things that to us seemed more important, those more durable concepts. I it seems to me, I've used you as I use you as an example all of the times when I'm talking to people about the good practice. I'm sorry about that, but one of the ways, one of the things that I've said that I've observed with you, and to be honest, it's true of some of my work, and people like Alfie, another friend of ours, who we both regard as very highly in terms of his skills, is that we could do a good job of writing code in a language that we hadn't used before.
Mm-hmm.
We might not necessarily be perfectly idiomatic. We wouldn't necessarily, you know all of the detail of the tools, but there's something else. There's some other level of design ideas going on that matter and seem more durable, more transferable. And it seems odd to me that as an industry, we so rarely talk about those kinds of things.
Yeah. Doing a few things really well is incredibly powerful. I think that's what you're saying, like to be going to the different languages, because it doesn't matter so much about the language. Like people want to learn every feature in every corner. Is it really the same? I sort of think back to my martial arts days when people wanted to know every kick and every technique, and it just becomes too much noise to draw on.
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of training with a few world champions at different stages, and they used to do just a few small number of things incredibly well.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be the essence of it all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. When last we worked together, we did all of the final stage interviewing of developers joining the team at LMAX. At the time, we used to talk a lot about the design and developer skills and the kinds of things that we were seeking, looking for people to join the team. So what are those things? Do you have a feeling? Do you have a sense of what those things are that we were looking for and that you value in the people that you admire?
Yeah, I think back at the time, I didn't totally know. Some of it was subconscious. Like over time, I've reflected more on these things, and I think I'm starting to get a handle on some of what I personally look for. And I think the sort of fundamental thing would be curiosity. Mm-hmm. So people who are naturally curious, and this is very strongly linked with an interest in learning, which then sort of flips into humility. So there's various things that all sort of link together, because we are an industry that's moving all of the time. It's always reinventing. So there's some key things that are really important, like we talked about, to get right, but there's a lot that's moving, a lot advancing all of the time. But if you're not curious, you're not going to keep up. You're not going to learn the new things. And I think this is where the sort of humility comes in as well, in that if you go into a new area and you learn something new, by its nature, you're going backwards to go forwards. And that's something that people have to be comfortable doing. And so some of what I started looking for was just evidence, like trying to do everything evidential, so get them to show some evidence of where they went through learning and watched how they did that and how they described it. So like try to get evidence of their curiosity, try to get evidence of how they were comfortable sort of going back to being a beginner within a topic and then moving forward again. And it's a lot of that. So I've heard the term now said about it, the growth mindset. It's that sort of thinking that do people have to be sort of wired to want to go that way and not to be stuck. Because I've seen this so many times where people who are very senior often won't accept change. They won't move forward. Like I love Ken Brack's sort of strap line on his famous XP book was embrace change. That just resonated with me, because that is so much what the modern world's like, not just our industry. And if you're not willing to accept, like let's go back to Darwin and Wallace. Like, it's all about adaptation. It's about being able to cope with the constantly changing environment. That's what matters. So you're sort of looking for that as a core. You're not looking for who has specific skills. Like I've joked to people in the past about how I did interviews around the year 2000 and slightly after that, and people will be questioning me on my knowledge of weird corners of C++ or WebLogic or something. You know, at one stage, I used to have fun where like I could just challenge people to ask me questions on WebLogic 7.3 or whatever it was, and kind of knew those corners of it, but it doesn't really matter. That's not that wasn't the going between the things. And I thought it was always field interviews when people were doing that. And people say, oh, but you did really well in that. But that's just luck of circumstance. That's not the right mindset that they're testing for.
Yeah, absolutely. That resonates strongly with me. I think that the last programming language that I felt that I'd used every bit of it because I was trying to was C. And I think the last thing that I used was unions in structures. And I remember kind of ticking that off and thinking, oh yeah, I've done C now. But it's meaningless. It's absolutely ludicrous. And very, very shortly after that, I realized that it was meaningless, and then I stopped trying. And so I joked for a little while about being a reduced instruction set programmer. So,
yes. So I remember you saying that, and I find myself sort of nodding in valid agreement.
But it's interesting that the focus that we tend to have on what somehow to me feels like technical ephemera. That the absolutely our industry moves quickly and things move on, but the fundamentals don't seem to change very quickly at all. That they are, those sorts of changes are much less frequent, and that I am, as you know, but for the benefit of the people that might be watching this, you know, I'm suspicious of people that think that they know it all or that are dogmatic about things, because my going in assumption is that anything that I think is probably wrong, but I'm going to make the strongest case that I can, and then you tell me where I'm wrong, and I'll be grateful to you. You know, that's something that's interesting. I had a funny experience recently on the YouTube channel. I had a comment on one of my YouTube videos that just said something. I'm slightly paraphrasing, but not by much. Is that you should ignore what this man says because he's old, grumpy and ugly. And I'm thinking, even if those things are true, and they might be, how does that affect whether my ideas are good or bad? You know, tell me that I'm wrong and show me the evidence that I'm wrong, and I'll be grateful to you. And that seems much more like an engineering mindset to me, and worrying about the ways in which the things that we build might go wrong. And thinking about that, there's a great quote from Margaret Hamilton, who led the flight control systems and the Apollo program, saying exactly that you know, she started to think of it as engineering when she realized that her primary focus was just thinking about all the ways that, as she described it, man-rated software could go wrong, and then tried to accommodate those in the design. You know, that seems like an important step to me. That what you're talking about as the curiosity and the need to learn. I remember again when you and I were interviewing lots of people. You in particular used to say all the time, we want the sorts of people that used to take the video recorder apart.
We're curious.
Indeed.
How does this work inside?
Thank you very much for watching.